Welcome to Moving Conversations, a podcast for movement professionals by movement professionals. If you coach, train, or teach movement, Pilates, or fitness, then this podcast is for you. With more than 60 years of experience in fitness and Pilates, your hosts, Brian Ritchie and Nora St. John, explore the science of human movement, diving deep into the facts, myths, and common misconceptions, hoping to spark thought and conversation about how we view fitness and movement. Now, let's jump into Moving Conversations. And welcome back to Moving Conversations. I'm Brian Ritchie. Joining me as always is Nora St. John. Good morning, Nora.
Good morning, Brian. How are you doing?
Doing good. Had to fight the snow coming in again today. I think they were right. I think the East Coast is going to have a lot more weather this year.
Oh boy, very exciting. And I know DC kind of has a tough history with that.
Yeah. They don't know what to do with it. And
right, exactly.
I will say this morning, totally off topic whatsoever, but I read this and I thought it was brilliant. You know, everybody says, oh, you shouldn't go and do like donuts in a parking lot with your car and all this kind of stuff. And I have to say, I believe the opposite is true. This morning, my parking lot, there was not a trace of a car in the lot. It was wide open space. I turned off the traction control on my truck and I did 360s. I did donuts for about 5 minutes. But I got to tell you, my car control ability came back to me in no time. I was going in and out of spins and in and out of drifts.
Nice.
And everything was coming back. So the fact that I haven't had to utilize that knowledge, that muscle memory came back quickly. And I'd rather have it be in a safe place like a parking lot than someplace, like on 270 coming into work when, I'm surrounded by all these other cars.
I love it. So practicing for snow, right?
Exactly.
We talk about winterizing your body. This is like winterizing your motor control.
Exactly. And it really was, because at first I was like, whoa, I got a little out of control. And I thought, oh, and within 5 minutes, my body sort of remembered how to get out of a spin and when your back end gets loose. So I said, all right, this was good practice, and
nice.
So just something, if you're having to deal with it and you haven't in a while, it's always nice to refresh that memory.
I love it.
So,
I love it. That's great.
And it's also so much fun. Brings out the kid in me, I can't help it.
That's awesome.
All right. So today's topic, we're going to go and review a little bit. We're going to be talking basically today about tendonitis and tendinosis. And for those of you who haven't listened to our, 3-part series on the fascial system, I know we literally just covered that a few weeks ago. We talked a little bit about scarring, and we just briefly talked about tendonitis and whatnot, because it does have to do with the fascial system, because obviously it's where the tendon attaches to the bone. So go back and listen to that. It'll give you a little bit of a primer for what we're going to talk about today and talk about scarring and things of that nature. So let's dive in and hit tendonitis and tendinosis.
Boom. So first of all, I want to start with just a touch of history, because when I was growing up in this world, 30 odd years ago, tendinosis was not, in my memory, a discussed diagnosis.
Not at all.
It wasn't really part of the deal. If a tendon hurt, if you were sore in a tendinous area, it was just all called tendinitis. Now that has changed. So before we go any further, I just want to define tendinitis and tendinosis, and then we'll go on from there.
And understand that they are different things.
They're different things,
yes,
and they need to be dealt with a little bit differently. Recovery will be a bit different. So there's some other elements there.
Yep.
Tendinitis is, in the way I think about it, an acute inflammation.
Mm-hmm.
It's usually, it involves swelling. It involves some pain. It often can resolve relatively quickly, and it doesn't necessarily imply damage to the tendon. Like there's sort of a temporary irritation, inflammation, it goes away. Maybe life is beautiful from that point on. That's very rough. We're going to get more detailed in a moment. Tendinosis is a little more complex. Tendinosis actually involves damage to the tendon structure. So it tends to be a little more long-term. It may not be as acute, maybe more of a slow onset situation. And because the tendon needs to fully heal and recover and remodel, it's going to take potentially a lot longer to recover, and there isn't necessarily an inflammation component.
Mm-hmm. And this is what I'm finding.
Summary?
Yeah, it's a great summary. This is what I think we are seeing much more of, is more of the tendinosis in my facility. And I think in the gym environment and even the Pilates environment, because these are the things that are chronic. They're the things that are longer lasting. They're the ones that don't go away quickly. They're the things that may be that lingering, nagging thing that is just, it's always there to a somewhat of a degree. Whereas, I mean, just from the name alone, tendinitis, itis usually means inflammation. So it's an inflammation of the tendon itself. So when I see tendinitis, I will often ask, how long have you had this? Because that will tell me.
And is it recurring?
Is it recurring?
Right. Is it recurring? Is it like, what's the history of it?
Yeah.
And is it swelling? Does it get hot? Like, what are the other characteristics of it?
Yeah. And does it go down when you apply things like the traditional remedies, ice and cortisone, or some of the more traditional remedies, compression? Because tendinitis will often relieve itself relatively quickly with those, whereas the tendinosis, we're going to get deeper into in just a minute, takes a lot longer.
Yeah, they're just not as easily dealt with.
Yeah. So what do we do for tendinitis? Let's do that.
Well,
first.
let's just talk about what tendinitis is.
Yes.
So so tendinitis, right? Tendonitis, inflammation of the tendon. Boom. Now, when I find that most commonly occurs is in a situation where two things. I'm going to talk two different ways here. One way is in a situation where a part of the body is not used to the stress that's being put on it. So classic example that I use is, I've worked with a lot of dancers and athletes over the years. And I remember this one kid who came in who had been to basketball camp for 4 weeks. It was like a 4-week summer basketball camp. Mm-hmm. Now, prior to that, he played basketball maybe twice a week, every now and then for a little while. Suddenly he's playing 3 or 4 hours a day.
Yep.
And he ended up with Achilles tendonitis.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what do you do in basketball? You jump, you're changing directions a lot. And basically, how I think of it is this: if you think of the tendon as being like a firm, a bit of structure that runs inside of a sheath, kind of a fascial sheath, if you will, for tendon to work, it has to glide smoothly through that sheath. Mm-hmm. Okay. Now, and it requires, and there will be some damage if you overdo it a bit, but if you don't give your body enough time to recover and heal from that, you will start to build up irritation and then potentially even scar tissue between that sheath and the tendon. And then things start to get sticky, because then as soon as you go and stretch that again, it tears those little fibers open and you get more inflammation. Mm-hmm. Is that pretty clear?
Yes, absolutely. I can't tell you how many times I've had someone, like you said, go away to basketball camp. The one for me is always the tennis camp. It's someone who plays once or twice a week. Then they're like, I'm going to go to tennis camp this summer. And immediately in my brain, I'm like, no, please, no. Because I know that their coach is going to want to improve their game, and they're going to teach them something like topspin. Uh-huh. And they're going to do the same motion for hundreds and hundreds or even thousands of repetitions in a row. Yeah. And tendinitis is really an overuse injury.
Absolutely.
It's something that occurs from overuse, not a one-time thing. It's more accumulation than, acute trauma. Yeah. So it's over and over and over and over. And after several thousand repetitions, you've created some inflammation within the muscle. The muscle's done more than it's ever done before. And then you're going to have that tendinitis. You're going to have that irritation. And that's where I see it. And again, basketball, jump shots. Beginning of the season, over and over and over, and you get that inflammation. Dancers
who've been teaching, been doing like 3 classes a week for an hour and are suddenly doing 3 classes a day for 2 weeks, dance camp in the summer, same thing, and are suddenly on point, or they're jumping or whatever. And this is it's not that the muscles can't accommodate to that. And this is really important. It's really that you're doing more than they're able to do at that time.
Right.
Right. So a lot of it is if a muscle has developed, and the whole myofascial system, really, let's be bigger on that, the musculotendinous system, has developed the endurance to be able to take that level of work and to recover efficiently, you can keep building that up. But typically this happens when the body just isn't given the chance to recover that it's used to based on its current level of strength and endurance.
Well, endurance is the right word, because we're talking about tissue tolerance. The tissues themselves can't tolerate that much stimulation or use. It's the same as if we decided to suddenly go for, you come into town and we say, we're going to hike the Appalachian Trail, when we've never, we don't hike that much. And all of a sudden we're hiking for 8 hours a day for a week. Well, guess what?
Right.
Our bodies aren't accustomed to that.
Yeah.
An hour or two, no problem. But that long, that endurance for those tissues, they're not ready for it.
Right. So that's a tendonitis typically happens. And when somebody comes in, like I always find it's worse when it's cold. So first steps out in the morning, first, running, putting on your shoes and running, whatever it is, the first movements of that area are often painful.
Yep.
It's better when it's warm, typically. So once you've warmed it up and you're moving, like the pain will typically calm down, at least in my experience. And then once it chills again, once like you stop doing that, you sit at your desk or you drive from wherever you're going or you sit for dinner and you get up again, that's when it hurts. And one way that I explain that, which we'll see if this makes sense, but one way that I explain that is, when things are warm and lubricated, then that glide of that tendon in that sheath is happening, right? You've got enough lubrication there to not have the discomfort, but you still have some of that damage between the tendon and the sheath. So then when you sit still, the body goes, ooh, I have to heal that, throws a bunch of collagen fibers. You remember from our fascia discussion, it says, here's irritation. I have to go and send some collagen fibers down there to heal that area of irritation. That tends to stick, again, that tendon and that sheath together. Then you stand up and stretch it, and boom, you pop all those little connections, and the pain comes back.
Yeah, yeah. And the pain can be quite severe.
It can be quite severe, yeah. It can be very sharp.
And that's
sharp and hot and painful.
Absolutely. And that's what we tend to see, especially when we see tennis elbow, elbow tendonitis, or we see, Achilles tendonitis or even patella tendonitis. We see that inflammation. We see that it is usually hot. There could be some swelling, and it takes time for it to heal. I just went through a bout with my biceps tendon, and I jumped into the gym too soon and started going back to old weights and started lifting and things and was really getting into it and ticked it off. This was last year. And it was like, oh, okay. And it took time to let it heal and rest.
One thing that I found, this may have been because of the population I worked with, which again was a lot of sort of dancers, young athletes and stuff with this issue. But I found one of the things that worked really, really well for me was creating more mobility in the muscle attached to that tendon. That I found a lot of times what was irritating things was that there wasn't enough mobility in that muscle, and that was leading to that, for whatever reason, that seemed to cause more inflammation.
Sure.
So a lot of times the first thing I work on is mobility. So whether it's stretching, whether it's my fascial release work, even some massage work, I find oftentimes that seems to decrease the stress on the tendon, or at least the tendonitis. So I almost always start with that. In terms of just a movement modality. For first aid, in this case, I really do recommend, rest, ice, compression, elevation. Ice can be very helpful here because, again, it is an inflammation.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of debate about ice and heat, which we'll get into at some point. But I found for this particular situation, ice can really decrease the pain and make the healing happen a little bit faster. Compression also can be somewhat helpful. So, for example, if you can compress it, if it's an Achilles tendon, you can put even just a compression sock. Will keep the swelling from building up. So those are some things. And then rest, you don't want to keep irritating it because that can lead to more damage over time. And it doesn't have to be absolute rest. It can still be movement, but not at the level you were doing, again, to keep the mobility there and to even keep some of the strength there.
I had a client who brought this up to me, and I found it fascinating. She is in the mental health industry, and she's suffered from a lot of issues. So she's done a lot of research on her own about healing. And sometimes motion, just movement, is sort of has that self-care feel to it. Just allowing the body to move in a very pain-free range of motion. So sometimes I'll have the client, if it's, for instance, their shoulder, they've got rotator cuff tendonitis. I'll have them lie on a foam roller or a spine fitter on their back long ways, and I'll just have them take their arms in a scissor. One goes overhead and one goes down by their hip. And I say, just go within pain-free range of motion. I don't care how small the range of motion is. Just move. And then let's do arm circles. And just to get some motion to the area. What I find, like you said, stretching it does help, getting more motion to the area. But also I find reminding the body that it can still move and it doesn't have to be locked up. You don't have to hold it in place like so many people way back when would put it in a sling.
Immobilize
Everything.
Yeah.
And I find just even reminding the body, hey, you can move through a pain-free range of motion. We just have to
Yeah.
avoid what hurts.
Yeah.
And if you stay within that for a while and then investigate that range of motion a little bit here and there, the body will be like, oh, okay. It almost like it trusts, like it's, oh, okay, I can do that. Oh, I can do that. And that little bit, eventually your range of motion increases and increases, and you do get more flexibility and more mobility within the joint.
Which gets back to some of our fascia discussion.
Yeah.
So if you remember, something we talked about there was that heat helps to liquefy some of those fluids and tissues so that there's more lubrication ability with warmth. So that's one thing, right? That just keeping it moving is keeping it warmer. If when you stop, things get colder. Blood isn't moving there because it doesn't have to as much, and things just get colder. So keeping it warm. And then the mobility factor, I think a lot of that is, again, if you think about this as being this irritation between the sheath and the tendon itself, that those are getting sticky, and that's a little bit of a metaphor, so take it as that, but I find it useful. If you're keeping that moving, then those little collagen crosslinks don't get a chance to grow. Right. So you're just keeping it moving. And the mobility is really critical on that as well. Yeah. So you're getting full range of motion there. And then, the neuromyofascial piece that I can move and I can feel comfortable.
Yes.
For many clients, that alone makes a huge difference. Like, because people get very scared when something hurts and they will tend to stop moving it. And oftentimes that's the worst possible thing.
Absolutely.
And the tendinitis, that is generally not a good thing. The second step after all of that mobility work is strength, because remember, the underlying problem here is that whole structure didn't have the endurance necessary and the long-term use necessary to do what was being asked of it. So the next thing is really strength.
And when it comes to strength training, I'm going to always preface this. There's a progression that I find works very well for this. Okay.
Yep.
We start with isometric, because too many people, especially in a body part that is fairly strong already, they'll think, oh, I can go back if they were doing, let's say, we're talking patella tendonitis or even Achilles tendonitis, and they're used to doing calf raises. Well, I can lift my body. I have to every time I walk upstairs. But you know what? Those tissues, you're just going to keep ticking off if you try and do your own body weight. So I find that isometric is a great way to get the muscle primed, get it ready to go. I find this especially works really well in the shoulder when it comes to rotator cuff, because sometimes just moving through that range of motion, you'll find that it doesn't want to move through the range of motion. So just allowing it to hold in place and applying a little bit of pressure and gently increasing that pressure and then releasing it. So I do it like on a count of 10. At 1, I'm barely pushing. By 5, I'm pushing it as much as I'm going to, and then I back off through the 10. And I find that works really, really well. So isometric, nice. I find works great. Next step would be eccentric. So controlling the downward descent. So I may, let's continue with the shoulder. I may take them and I'll move them into an externally rotated position and just hold that. And sometimes it's just if I have them lying on their side with their humerus, their upper arm bone against their ribs, okay, and their elbow fixed basically to the side and their arm is rotated out. So their arm is bent at 90 degrees, their arm is rotated out. I'll just have them control the motion down with no weight.
Yep.
And then I'll lift it back up if they can't, and then control it down. Most people can withstand that. And after 2 or 3, times of doing that, whether it be 2 or 3 sessions or 2 or 3 weeks or even 2 or 3 repetitions, then I'll let them go into a concentric where they're lifting the arm and controlling it down. But if you notice, I haven't mentioned any weights. I haven't mentioned any resistance.
No, there's like gravity. Gravity and body weight in a way. In this case, it's really just your arm.
Yep.
And I do the same thing with the Achilles tendon, which is the other place, or even with the patella, where I start, I kind of get them using the leg that isn't injured to push them up onto, a heel raise, right? So just don't worry about the other leg. Don't let it work too much. Hold on to a counter or a bar, whatever you're holding on to, and slowly lower down. And then again, use that leg to push up and slowly lower down. Both with straight legs. Then I also do the same thing with bent legs to work on both the gastroc and the soleus connection there. And honestly, I mean, then I also work a little bit three-dimensionally. So like for the rotator cuff, do not just, even if it's an external rotator cuff issue, I'll do also internal rotation.
Absolutely.
Or with the ankle, I'll do, if it's the Achilles tendon, I'll do plantar flexion. I'll also do dorsiflexion, and I'll do inversion. I'll do eversion, because a lot of times it's that you want more of the area participating if possible in the action, right? So it can take some load off of whatever area is irritated.
No question, no question. And if you start very gently, the body responds fairly well. So
that's been my experience.
Yeah. So I'll use like the lightest band when I give them homework to do. I'll say, here's the lightest band possible. What I find for especially the rotator cuff, and when I'm having them do isometric sometimes, is I'll have them hold in a standing position, elbows pitched to the side and their hands out in front of them. I'll have them hold it with both hands, and I'll have them do the other arm, take it into external rotation, and just have them isometrically hold the other side. The injured side, or the weaker side. Because that's going to be doing what I do here in the facility, is applying that isometric. And there's something called physiologic overload, where you'll have an area within a range of motion that may be the sticking point. It may be an area that is most angry, and sometimes it's in the middle of a range of motion. Well, if you train isometrically before and after that, it can bridge that gap.
Nice.
Over time. And that's nice. I mean, anytime in physiologic overload, if you train something isometrically at a certain degree, like 90 degrees, you're actually going to get stronger for anywhere from 7 to 10 degrees on both sides of that. So let's say if you're at 90, from 80 to 100, you're getting stronger.
Yeah.
So if you approach where you're the weakest and just train isometrically there, then go beyond where you're weakest and train there, it can bridge that gap.
Nice. That's great. I love that. And for me, again, I'm going to go for Brian's doing shoulder. I'm kind of doing ankle just because these are two common places for tendonitis. With the ankle, a lot of times what I do, because that's, you can certainly do TheraBand work and that kind of thing with it, add a little bit of resistance to it. But I've often found for a lot of people that I've worked with this, they'll just have them supine, just lying on their back with their feet up in the air. So they're already getting a little less blood flow there than they could be, just because gravity is taking it out of them, and just plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, no resistance, just gravity really. Plantar flexion, dorsiflexion, and then plantar flexion with inversion and eversion, dorsiflexion with inversion and eversion, or ankle circles or that kind of thing. And with many of my dancers who are trying to heal some version of tendonitis, could be Achilles, could be peroneal, could be other kinds of things. They do that, and I just have them do that before class or before whatever activity they're going to be doing, and that's often taken care of within a couple of weeks. Do the mobility work and then do the strength work, even without a lot of resistance. Then we slowly build that up over time.
Sure.
But just getting the movement back and getting the strength back, both isometrically and also just minimal resistance, seems to be really helpful.
Yeah. For the ankle, one exercise that I find that really helps to get the mobility back are what I call ankle alphabets. And that's just hanging over, find a table or something where your feet are off the ground and hang over that way, or cross a knee over the other knee, and literally just draw the alphabet with your toe. Your big toe's the pencil, and draw the alphabet, because you're going to be working in three-dimensional motion, all the ranges of motion. So the ankle doesn't tend to want to freeze up, which is so likely.
Yes.
If you do nothing with it and you start limping, I can tell you, you start limping and reducing the flexion and extension in order to protect it. Or if you've been in a boot for any length of time, which sometimes they will do, which will be basically immobilizing it, you will find that you need to get that mobility back. So that's one thing that I find that works really well, and you don't need to put any resistance on it to start. Just draw the alphabet. And it's exhausting.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah, and I've had clients who are like, but I never have a chance to do that. I said, okay, these are my clients who are busy working people. I said, are you in meetings? It's like, yeah. How many meetings are you in, a week? Like, well, pretty much I got 1 or 2 every day. I said, are you fully engaged in those meetings? They're like, well, not really. I said, okay, so cross one ankle over the other knee and do your alphabet while you're in the meeting. It's like, I always try to give people, like, this doesn't have to be a time set aside. But how can you just do this when you're sitting there? You're bored, just point and flex your foot, or in your case, like, just gently rotate the shoulders, right? I'm hanging in a meeting. You can kind of do that. People aren't going to think you're too weird. So anything that you can get just to keep that area moving rather than being static.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, start with isometric, go into an
Yep.
eccentric, then you can get into concentric. And with the ankle especially, you have to just be cautious when you're doing concentric if you're using body weight, because that can be a little bit too much, especially for some of our larger clients. It can be a little bit more challenging. But I do love the eccentric, where you go up on with both feet and then come down on the weaker side. Go up with both, come down on the weaker side. That is a great way to begin building strength on that side.
And in the Pilates environment, we have really incredible tools for this, because we have both the reformer, the foot
Yep.
bar and the reformer, where you can really adjust that resistance as you like. And again, have them come up and then go down slowly for
Yep.
the eccentric work. You can adjust the resistance wherever you need to in terms of getting the ankle working. And then on the chair, the classic Achilles stretch on the chair, you push down fast, maybe with, again, have the pedal together with a strong leg, and then slowly come up. And you'll feel that that little eccentric judder, if you will. And that's great. And then even on the trap table, with the push through bar sprung from the bottom, for all the footwork on there or the Achilles work on there, those are all fabulous places where you can really decrease the resistance as much as you need to and slowly build it up.
I have used the chair countless times for people who have had ankle injuries in general, but also ankle tendonitis, where you have that hover, and you literally just, with a fairly light resistance, dorsiflex, plantar flex. And you're going to find everyone can plantar flex. They push down real easy. I say, now control it back up. Exactly. Then down. And they're always like, why is it doing that? I said, well, you've got a little weakness, a little bit of motor control issue. Let's practice. And after, a couple of weeks of doing that regularly, suddenly it's nice and smooth. And they say, oh, I think I got this. You increase the resistance. You can really do things. So the chair is an incredible, tool for that. I love that.
If the other thing I do, I'll just a rhythm for it. So I'll say, okay, go down on one. So push the pedal down on one and up for 3 counts. So 1, 2, 3, 4, push 2. So the plantar flexion's fast and the eccentric phase is slow.
Yep.
Oh, that's just another way that I play with that particular rhythm.
I also love to reverse that sometimes, though.
Yep.
Because going down slow, you'll also find everybody wants to explode, especially with the calf, because that has so much fast twitch fibers that they just want to boom. And when you tell them on 3, 1, 2, and they're already down, they're like, wait, that's slow. And you say 1, 2, 3, and then control it up. 1, 2, 3. And that can be frustrating for them.
Yep.
That can be very frustrating, but it's a way, again, that just changes, the way that they're doing it and the way that they're comfortable doing it.
And get strength through the whole range.
Yes.
Because, I know, like working with dancers, a lot of times you'll see they'll pop up onto the ball of the foot. And then they're kind of on bone balance there. They reach kind of the end of their joints and hang out, but they don't have the strength between there, right? Between kind of ground and up. Like they're fine once they're up because they're kind of locked in place, but they don't have that strength coming partway up. So that's also a way to kind of like say, okay, now stop halfway, hold there, hold there, hold there.
Yep.
Go down, go up halfway, like working in those in-between ranges. And getting full mobility, full strength through that whole system for functional movement.
Love it. Love it. Well, let's get into tendinosis. But before we do that, I'm going to remind you, you're listening to Moving Conversations with Nora and Brian. Hey, if you're liking the podcast, do us a favor, subscribe so you can get the latest episode in your feed every Tuesday, right at 5 a.m. And if you really like us, give us a 5-star rating. I've been told a number of times, you guys don't have enough ratings on there. So please go on to Apple Podcasts, give us a good rating. That way it helps fix these algorithms. I have no idea what I'm talking about here, but I'm just saying, if people say it helps. Email, you can always reach out to us at movingcombos@gmail.com, Moving Combos, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. All right. Now we've got that out of the way, the housekeeping out of the way, let's talk about tendinosis.
So tendinosis is more recalcitrant. This is where the tendon has perhaps had tendinitis enough times or long enough, or there's been an acute injury or something where there's actually damage within the fibers of the tendon.
Yes.
This tends to be harder to resolve. So again, going back to Fascia 101, if we are trying to remodel our tendon so that those fibers are in the appropriate orientation to take the stress that we want to put on them without being irritated. That's kind of what's happening there. It takes time, 6 months, 6 to 18 to 24 months, depending on who you talk to. So tendinosis is much more a process of, I find, a slow, gradual, progressive build of strength and mobility. If you go too fast, you'll tend to just irritate the area again.
And again, and again,
and again, and again. So it's very, it can be frustrating for a client. And next week we're talking about elbow tendonitis, and tendinosis is classic. There, where it just gets stuck. Achilles a bit. Patellar tendinosis is another one that I've seen be a little bit recalcitrant. Sometimes even hamstrings.
I've had a lot of that. There. I can't tell you how many people I've had say they first got the tendinitis in high school playing soccer. Females, especially. I've had a lot of female soccer players, and it's stopped they say it stopped my career, but they stopped playing because it was so recurrent that it was constantly happening, and they're in their 30s and their hamstrings are still angry. They still, if I do something, it gets upset again, and then I have to stop. I can't exercise. And it's like, oh my gosh, okay, we have to, forgive the term, but dig into this, because this is something that is going to keep recurring unless we do something about it.
Right. So with tendinosis, there's a couple of different ways that I work with tendinosis. It's very different than tendinitis. One of them is, if I'm thinking again of this process of restructuring fibers and restructuring fiber angles. This gets to some of the scar work we talked about in our previous fascia stuff. That I actually have to do something, or somebody else who has manual skills has to do something to try to break down some of those inappropriate cross linkages within typically the musculotendinous junction. It could be in the tendon itself, or it could be the attachment to the bone, but it's often the musculotendinous junction, somewhere in there where things are again, cross fibers are in inappropriate places. So every time you move that, they're tearing, they're pulling, they're causing irritation.
So you're talking about massage work, basically. You need to get in there and do body work.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, body work, myofascial release, maybe. As Brian and I've said in other contexts, it's hard to work hard enough on yourself.
Yeah.
For a lot of this is where it takes somebody who's a little,
masochistic,
willing to go there. Yeah, exactly. Willing to go there, because most of us are not willing to work an area hard enough to really create some of that breakdown, because you have to break down the tissues you don't want and then build the tissues you do want. You can't just break down the funky cross linkages. You have to make sure that you then rebuild in the vectors and angles that you want.
Right. You need to break it down before you can build it up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And you can do it, I find, with the hamstrings. But again, I hate to say it, but someone who is a little bit more masochistic, who sees the benefit of it, you can have them using a hard foam roller get into...
Yeah, or even a tennis ball.
Or a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's like, look... Yeah. But they need to know exactly where they're doing it, because if you get off the area, there's other soft tissue areas that you don't want to tick off, but... At the insertion point where you're talking about at the ischial tuberosity in the pelvis, right there, and working that with something that's hard enough, that can begin to help. Because there's a lot of people out there who aren't specialists in massage and things like that. So this is something that we can teach them how to do. But I, like you, highly recommend get yourself a good massage therapist that you can send them to, who's willing to dig in, or a physical therapist. And I find right now, a lot of physical therapists aren't really doing a lot of hands-on work as much as they did 20 years ago. So you need to find someone who's really good at it, who's willing to work hard. Yeah.
One thing I say, if you are going to do this as self-work, right, if you do this as self-massage, is don't do it every day.
Yes.
So I'm kind of on a 3 times a week plan. That's been the most successful for me, because what I want to do is this is in my mind, and this is kind of how it works from a physiological perspective, at least some of the research implies this. I'm breaking down those fibers. The body's going in and clearing out that gook that I got rid of, but it hasn't had a chance to grow new fibers again. Right. That's kind of the idea is I want to break down what we've got and then let that just get cleaned out and then go at it again,
Yep.
allowing myself time to recover in between.
Yep.
I have a lot of type A clients. I'm sure many of you do. And they'll just go, well, 5 minutes is good. Half an hour is better. And they end up causing more trouble than they solve.
Yep.
So I also say do 5 minutes, do it intensely for 5 minutes, and then stop and do that 3 times a week and then see where you go from there.
Yeah. My OCD clients, I hate to say I love them and hate them all at the same time because they're the ones that
they'll do what you say.
And do it. And again, for a lot of times I'll tell clients, yes, do the exercises every day because we all know human nature. They will be lucky if they do it 3 times a week.
Yes.
But there are that 10% that if I say to do it 15 times, they'll do 2 sets of 50.
Yeah, exactly.
And those are the people you have to watch out for because you give them the harder foam roller, which I'm a fan of the softer ones, but in this case, you may need something a little harder. Like you said, something like a baseball, a tennis ball, something that's going to be firmer, a lacrosse ball, or one of the black foam rollers. But these are the people that will watch the entire news program while grinding on their issue tuberosity. And afterwards, they'll say, you'll be so proud of me for what I did. And then they can't walk for 2 weeks.
Exactly. And those are the ones I give a time to. I say, get your clock. Everybody's got a phone now. Get your phone, set a 5-minute timer, and stop at the end of that. Other clients, you've got to say, yes, you're going to do this every day because it's going to be twice a week if you're lucky.
Yep.
But that's that psychology piece. That's the art of what we do.
Exactly. So the body work is a critical component of this because you need to break down those cross fibers. You need to break down, that tissue that's formed and we said this when we talked about the fascia. When it's formed and is irregular, it's not running in the same direction as it once was, or as the muscle fibers are. It's not going to be as strong. It's going to form adhesions. There's a lot of issues that are going to happen. So we need to break that down. And then what do we do after that to really begin to start the healing process?
Well, I think it's the same strength progressions that you do. So mobility for sure, but mobility is something that I'm cautious of because particularly with a hamstring, with the hamstring, the typical thing is it gets irritated. It has a tendinosis going on at that ischial tuberosity. And somebody says, oh, yeah, I went and took my first yoga class and we did a whole bunch of forward folds and that irritates it.
Yep.
So oftentimes mobility work will really irritate, especially the hamstring. So with that, I kind of minimize mobility. Like I might do foam rolling, yes, on the site, but I also might just foam roll the muscle. Mm-hmm. Right, rather than actually stretching the muscle, I'll just roll over it and try to get it to release that way without actually pulling the tissue. And then it's the same slower, but the same strength progression. Isometric, and then eccentric, and then concentric, slowly.
Yes.
And doing whatever you need to do to keep the inflammation or the irritation, I should say, down in between times.
Yeah.
You got to find what their particular tolerance is.
And think about it this way: we talked about it with the tendinitis. It's basically created all of these cross bridges, and every time you stretch it, you're breaking through those. Well, what's going to happen?
Right.
Those want to regrow as quickly as possible.
Yeah.
So if you stretch too aggressively, which a lot of people do, especially with the hamstrings, I find that that's the one that's probably most problematic, as well as the Achilles. But what I'll do is I'll let them in a hamstring stretch bend their knee to about 20 degrees. So they're still going to get the belly of the muscle, but they're not going to feel it at the tendinous junctions as much.
Yeah.
They'll feel it more in the middle. And to do it and I'll say about a 3 or a 4 for intensity, not a 6, 7, 8, which is more what people are used to doing for that.
Yeah, and cueing the bent knee, feel it in the belly of the muscle is critical.
Yes.
And most clients can get that. Most times it's like, okay, just, come into your little bit of a stretch. If you feel it at either behind the knee, in some case I'm working on that, or up at the ischial tuberosity, bend the knee a bit and try to feel it really in the muscle, in the belly of the muscle. And they can usually figure that out and feel that difference.
Yeah. We also have to remind people that that works really well for 2 joint muscles. Because you can basically shorten one end by bending it while you're still lengthening the other. Biceps tendon, I see a lot of tendinosis in the biceps tendon as well. And the unfortunate thing about that is we also get an inflammation of that sheath so much that it wants to pop out of the bicipital groove. And then we've got other issues in that area
Right.
where it doesn't sit still, it's moving around, and you go to stretch that or they take their arm behind their back and it just causes extreme excruciating pain.
And this one, I do almost entirely manual work on.
Yeah.
I don't find that like just a stretch will do. Like I just really just grab the bicep and try to kind of peel it up off the bone, if you will, and just give it some of that. And that's I found to be very effective on that. I don't do rolling on it or anything. I just
Yeah.
squeeze it and kind of lift it up. And I found that to be really helpful.
Interesting.
With the biceps tendon.
I like that. I haven't used that technique. Usually for me, it's just working elongation, sort of going toward the heart. I mean, all things that we learned in massage school,
Yeah.
but trying to lengthen it that way, but not taking them. I don't want to take the arm behind the body because that's going to put
Yeah.
into too much stretch. So what I'll do is
Yeah.
I'll put them on my massage table, my stretching table, and with a bent arm, I can work it that way and I can roll it. Instead of
Yeah.
peeling it up, I can roll it. I can work toward the heart and just stretch it out gently toward where they're feeling it, basically. They're feeling it in the shoulder. It's basically lengthening it toward that spot.
And I'm doing this. I'm doing this as we speak. I'm massaging my bicep tendon right now.
I was doing the
But you
same.
guys, yeah, exactly. That feels good. So you guys at home, like one of the things that I really encourage people to do is to see what you can do yourself. Because I know for me, like I've got a little biceps tendonitis going on at the moment, and if I just massage that, like the pain goes away almost immediately.
Yeah.
And I can tell it's tight because when I grab that muscle, it feels kind of sharp and kind of grisly and kind of yucky. Same thing with the triceps, and I'll just feel like it's not happy. And I wouldn't know that. Like I will not know that if I'm just hanging around. I'll
Right.
know it because if I really bring my arm behind me, I'll get a little bit of pain in the front of my shoulder, which lets me know things are tight. But if I just grab that muscle, I'll go, oh, okay, so things are getting a little sticky in there, a little tight. And again, that just getting them to let go, getting them to glide.
Yeah, that does help a lot.
Right.
Does help a lot.
Yeah.
So what are some other things that if you went to the doctor, for instance, okay, for either tendinitis or tendinosis, because usually that's what they do. They get an MRI or they get checked out. There's certain muscle tests that a physician can do that tells them, okay, it's bicipital tendinitis, it's rotator, whatever it is, or Achilles tendinitis. What I find common is usually going to be an anti-inflammatory of some sort.
Yes, that's step one, typically.
Step one. And
Whatever,
again,
whatever you can tolerate.
physicians in general, getting rid of the inflammation is primary. I mean, that's something they've got to do. So getting rid of the inflammation. So an anti-inflammatory of some sort. And a lot of times people will already be doing that because they'll take whatever over-the-counter NSAID, floats their boat or works for their body. Everybody's body is different. Next step oftentimes is going to be cortisone.
Yes.
And I find cortisone sometimes works like a charm. Other times doesn't work nearly as well.
One thing that I always have to say about cortisone, because of what all the doctors tell me this in sports medicine, is two things. One, when you inject cortisone into an area, particularly a tendinous or ligamentous area, it can cause tissue damage by itself.
Yes.
Just something to be aware of. And so typically, unless you're, again, a high-level athlete or whatever, you're not going to do more than 3 of those over a period of time. And typically, there's a couple things, too, about just generally steroid injections. One is they may have immediate pain relief. They may have pretty quick pain relief.
Mm-hmm.
But understand that it's kind of like they're on an anesthetic, okay? So do not, just because they feel better, they had a shot yesterday, they come in to see you the next day, they feel a whole bunch better, do not go back to their previous program.
No.
Because you're not getting accurate, like that tissue hasn't healed. The tissue may have calmed down the inflammation, but it hasn't healed yet. So still start where you were and slowly build them up. And then I often find it's not till 2 or 3 weeks after the injection that I know whether it's going to stick or not.
Right.
Because after that 2 or 3 week mark, it'll either be better, and that's great, and we move on from there, or it will just start to come back, or it will not have made any difference at all. Like all those things are possible.
Yeah.
So just be aware of that with steroid injections.
What I like about steroid injections is it does cause a rapid de-escalation of the problem. So we're going to have a reduction of inflammation. And it gives us an opportunity to begin some of that isometric work or some of that mobility work where they may not have as much a pain as they would
Yeah.
before. So in that sense, it allows us to do a little bit more work where they may not be as guarded, where they may not be as wanting to immobilize it, where they're allowing themselves to find that pain-free range of motion, and they can work it isometrically. And again, I'm saying we work it slowly. We're slow and soft. Don't go overboard on it because you're just going to tick it off and make it, it'll recur. It'll come back. But it gives us an opportunity to sort of take advantage of the inflammation being reduced to, okay, we can begin the process slow and steady. And I find that can help. But
yes,
at the same time, if it's tendinosis, I mean, the client may need multiple injections over a period of time, or the doctor will give them multiple injections over a period of time, for the same
and remember,
injury.
tendinosis isn't fundamentally inflammation.
No, it's true.
So, you may be, in some situations, you may be damaging the tendon more by getting the injections than you are, and you may be solving short-term pain relief for long-term, not healthy tissues.
Interesting.
So I'm always a little tendinosis again. This is the tools in the toolbox. Anti-inflammatories and steroid injections. Those are the typical tools. So I'm always a little cautious with. I think more cautious than you are, Brian, with steroid injections.
Yeah. The other thing that I just literally talked with a client about today that's becoming much more prevalent that we're seeing is doctors suggesting PRP injections, plasma-rich platelets. And they always ask me, I've had a number of clients have them, and I haven't seen a whole lot of success.
It hasn't made much difference.
No. And I don't know if it could be age, because these are all clients who are above 50, let's say. Okay. Whereas I'm sure if I had someone who is a lot younger, they may respond a little bit better, because what I always hear is, oh, this is the guy who works with the yada yada team or this sports team or that sports team. And I'm thinking, well, that's great. You're dealing with someone who has, a ton of incentive, incredible physical therapy, and they're young. They've got great connective tissue already. And
they're highly motivated.
So guess what? They probably do have much more success with that than the average Joe who basically is looking for the magic pill, who just wants one injection and then it goes away, and it's incredibly painful when you get that injection. It can be, I've had a couple of clients have it for something like elbow tendonitis, Achilles tendonitis, and does it hurt for like a week or two. It causes a lot of pain for some people. So it's one of those new therapies that a lot of people are talking about. And again, personally, I haven't seen a lot of success with it with the clients that I've had. That doesn't mean it's not working. It's just the clients that I've seen hasn't responded the way that they were hoping it would.
Good to know. Good to know.
Just something, just in general. And when it comes to cortisone and things like that, I do find that it can help. But again, I say, try it. If it seems to help, fine. If it's not helping, move on.
Yeah.
Okay, because it's not going to suddenly work. I had to have a number of injections when I had elbow tendonitis, and we're covering that next week, gang. We're going to cover, I had both lateral and medial epicondylitis, one on each hand. Oh, it was fun, let me tell you. But I had to have multiple injections. And it wasn't until the last one that things sort of started to heal. There's also, I know one doctor who believed in this, and it is really on the fringes of medicine, where he would give multiple injections of cortisone in order to break down the tissue. So we're talking about in a short period of time, not over, a lot of doctors won't give you an injection for another 4 months or 3 months, whatever their magic number is. But this person was doing it weekly for a period of time. And it broke down the tissue, but guess what? It allowed the tissues to heal in the end, and the person never had a problem. Again, this is a doctor who is more on the fringes, and I'm not saying that that works. I'm not saying, I just know this one person that was like, wow, it did seem to work for them. And this was chronic for 10 years. So it's just something that you may encounter, that certain physicians have different philosophies when it comes to things like steroid injections or PRP or prolotherapy. These are all a lot of new stuff that people are talking about. So, do your due diligence, do some research on it, and understand that a lot of it's not covered by insurance, and there's not a ton of research out there.
Right. Good.
Yeah. So hopefully this answered a couple of questions that people may have had.
We went deep as we usually do. Feel free to, if you got any other questions, feel free to email us, and we're happy to answer as you go. If there's anything specific we can help you with. I think that the key thing here is know what you've got.
Yep.
Get a good diagnosis. Work with your movement professionals are really a key part of this.
Very much so.
This is really something where your basic MD is going to give you anti-inflammatories and maybe a steroid injection. Your basic PT, especially if they've got some manual skills, could be really, really helpful.
Yep.
But a lot of this is getting back to the fundamental root, is really regaining the mobility and the strength and the endurance of that area to be able to tolerate the stresses that are being put on it. So that's ultimately where we have to head as a big goal. Getting there can be a very slow process or a quicker process, and there can be a lot of little oxbows along the way that are not quite straight. But that's the basic idea.
And I'm going to remind people, if you get a client from a physical therapist, ask them what exercises are they currently doing? What did the PT give them?
Yeah.
And more importantly, are you still doing them?
Yeah.
Because how many times do people quit physical therapy and they say, oh, I haven't done those exercises in the last 3 months. And I said, oh, and you're back in pain. Some things are exercises that you may have to do for a long period of time or for the rest of your life, and it's okay. You may just have to include that into your workout.
I also say have them show you their exercises if they can remember them. And one of the things that I learned early on was you have, like, if a client is doing an exercise really poorly and you're kind of like, what is that? Do not assume that the physical therapist or whatever other practitioner they're working with gave them that version of that exercise.
Yes.
This could have definitely been a telephone moment of them interpreting something that really doesn't make sense, but they don't know that. So I'm always like, well, that's interesting. It's a nice way to do it. We're just going to try it a little differently today. I'm always very, very politic about that. I really don't want to tear down any other practitioners or anything like that, or have them doubt, or have no faith in whoever they're working with. I'm just like, okay, well, let's just try this a little differently. And then I'll basically correct their form or whatever I'm trying to do.
We
so
call
just
it
something to be aware of there too.
Yeah, we call that making the exercises your own.
Yes, there you go.
And even in my facility, the first session we give them homework. They come in for the second time, we go over the homework, and every time they've either got questions or they are doing it, some of them so wrong that you're thinking, I don't even know how you got that out of what I showed you.
Exactly. Where did that go?
Yeah. It's like, oh, we're going to tweak that a little bit. And that's usually what I'll say from a physical therapist. If they've come to me and I'll say, interesting. Let's just tweak that a little bit. Let's
Exactly.
And sometimes in the tweaking, they'll say, "Oh, this makes sense. So and so may have mentioned this or whatever," and just say, "We're just going to modify this a little bit. We're going to tighten this up a little bit." Don't make them wrong. Just
say we're just going to adjust this a little bit.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but always remind them to continue to do those exercises because, how many times have I talked to someone, I say, if I can give you 5 exercises that'll keep your back from hurting the rest of your life, would you do them? And they all say, yes, yes, yes. Say, if you had to do them every day for the rest of your life, would you do them? Yes, yes. But as soon as the back pain goes away, when's the last time you did those exercises? Oh, yeah, that was a while ago. So again, remind them, especially for tendinitis and tendinosis, sometimes you have to keep that area strong. And if you stop doing the exercises, you can't get weak again and you can have a recurring issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, I think we hit just about everything on that. Thank you guys for joining us for Unmoving Conversations. And again, we did a deep dive into this. Next week, It's a fan's choice. Someone reached out to us and said, would you please, please, please do golfer's elbow and do tennis elbow? So I said, absolutely, which is why we thought, let's do one on just overall tendinitis, tendinosis, and then we'll jump into a specific. And again, we talked about a lot of different areas. So, but if you notice, we didn't talk a whole lot about tennis and golfer's elbow. So next week,
that's for next week.
Yeah, we're going to jump into this because I'm sure people are at home saying, but, trust me, we're going to get to it. And that's next episode. We're going to do a much deeper dive on golfers and tennis elbow because I find that that's one of the areas that we get hit the most with. And especially with pickleball being so popular now, we're seeing it a lot more. So if you have another topic that you want us to cover, please reach out, movingconvos@gmail.com. And until next time, keep it moving, guys.
See you later.